U.S. President Donald Trump on Sunday said he had a good phone call with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy. I thought it was a good call. He's been hit very hard as I said he would. He's being hit very hard. And I was very disappointed with my call with President Putin. I was very disappointed, Trump told reporters in Morristown, New Jersey on Sunday. According to Associated Press, Russia and Ukraine have exchanged drone strikes, disrupting air travel and causing fatalities and damage. Photos on social media showed crowds huddling at Russian airports, including key international hubs in Moscow and St. Petersburg, as hundreds of flights were delayed or cancelled due to Ukrainian drone strikes. The attacks followed Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy's announcement of deals with Western partners to boost drone production. Ukraine has increasingly relied on drones to counter Russia's offensives.
DC City Council has not approved a new stadium for the Commanders. If they don't approve it, will you step in?
Well, we see what happens. I've been looking at the deal, and, I don't blame them. It's a very important piece of property. It's a great piece of property, so we'll see. But if I can help them out, I will. Ultimately, we control that. The federal government ultimately controls it, so we'll see what happens. I saw the plans, I saw the stadium. The owner's very, very successful and a very good man. I know him a little bit. And it would be a great place for the NFL to be there, I can tell you that. So if they want to negotiate a little tough, that's okay with me.
Like to see the Commanders change the name back to Redskins?
Well, you want me to make a controversial statement? I would. I wouldn't have changed the name. But that's there. It just doesn't have the same. It doesn't have the same ring to me. But winning can make everything sound good. So if they win, all of a sudden the Commander sounds good. But I wouldn't have changed the name. Say it.
Why not help Ukraine the same way you help Israel?
I am helping Ukraine. I'm helping it a lot, and it's a war that should have never happened. It's a war that should have never started. If I were president, if the election weren't rigged, and it was rigged so badly, and that's come out. Read Miranda Devine in the New York Post today. The election was totally rigged, and if it weren't rigged, you wouldn't have a war with Russia right now, and you wouldn't have had inflation, and you wouldn't have had the horrible Afghanistan the way they left. Not that they left. We would have been out before them, but the way they left. I think the most embarrassing day in the history of our country. You wouldn't have had the October horror show with Israel and Hamas. You wouldn't have had any of it. You wouldn't have had the recent showdown with Iran. You wouldn't have had any of it. And you wouldn't have had inflation.
Well, you said you had a strategic call with Zelensky the other day. What strategy did you
I thought it was a good call. He's being hit very hard, as I said he would. He's being hit very hard, and I was very disappointed with my call with President Putin. I was very disappointed.
Major Russian entrepreneurs have withdrawn record amounts of money from their companies, which happened against the backdrop of a credit crisis and a decline in investor activity, according to Forbes experts. It has become known that the total volume of payments by Russian companies in favor of 50 businessmen last year reached 1.769 trillion rubles, which broke the record. Thus, the controlling shareholder of Severstal, Alexei Mordashov, received almost 202 billion rubles, and the co-owner of Lukoil, Vagit Alekperov, received 201 billion. Among the leaders who pumped money out of the Russian economy are also Vladimir Lysin, Leonid Mikhelson, and Alisher Usmanov. The Russian Union of Industrialists and Entrepreneurs, in whose work many of the above-mentioned representatives of big businesses took part, is sounding the alarm, assessing the state of the Russian economy. According to their data, many Russian enterprises are on the verge of default, and the economy has been showing signs of recession since the end of last year, as well as the risks of a hard landing. It is worth noting that the top leadership of the Russian Federation, including the dictator Vladimir Putin himself, is well aware of the above-mentioned problems, but he is quite happy with this, and he is not going to take any measures against the oligarchs. Despite the immense pressure of international sanctions, Russia's economy has shown remarkable resilience, largely due to its vast natural resources and support from key allies like China. The country's ability to produce essential commodities such as food and energy has allowed it to withstand prolonged economic pressure, much like other heavily sanctioned states. However, this endurance is no accident. Over the past 3 years, Russia has deliberately restructured its economy, shifting priorities from civilian prosperity to military production. Even if hostilities were to cease immediately, Russia's economic transformation is unlikely to be reversed. The Kremlin has redirected vast industrial capacities toward defense production, fundamentally reshaping the economic landscape. This shift has created a new class of economic beneficiaries, industries and individuals profiting from the war, who now have a vested interest in sustaining Putin's war economy. The substantial investment in military infrastructure and the prioritization of defense industries indicate that Russia is preparing for prolonged geopolitical tensions with an economy increasingly centered on military capabilities. Reversing this trajectory would require not only political will, but also extensive economic reforms, both of which remain improbable in the near future.
Iran's Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei on Saturday made his first public appearance since the 12-day war between Israel and Iran began, attending a mourning ceremony on the eve of Ashura. According to Associated Press, the absence of Khamenei during the war had suggested heavy security for the Iranian leader, who has final say on all state matters. State TV in Iran showed Khamenei waving and nodding to the chanting crowd, which rose to its feet as he entered and sat at a mosque next to his office and residence in the capital, Tehran. There was no immediate report on any public statement made. Iranian officials, including the Speaker of Parliament, were present, and such events are always held under heavy security. The 86-year-old had spent the war in a bunker as threats to his life escalated. After the U.S. inserted itself into the war by bombing 3 key nuclear sites in Iran, U.S. President Donald Trump sent warnings via social media to Khamenei that the U.S. knew where he was but had no plans to kill him, at least for now. On June 26, shortly after a ceasefire began, Khamenei made his first public statement in days, saying in a pre-recorded statement that Tehran had delivered a slap to America's face by striking a U.S. air base in Qatar, and warning against further attacks by the U.S. or Israel on Iran.